What a night of fights, guys. UFC 236 just wrapped up, and what can I say? Those last two fights pretty much took over the entire card. Everything else is pretty hard to remember at this point. I mean, two high-pace, 5-round fights back and forth. Shoot, man, I can't even remember the Adesanya fight, like details. But let's start with the main event. Dustin Poirier beats Max Holloway 49-46 on all scorecards. I mean, he was blasting through Holloway in those first two rounds, and that is exactly what you have to do. This is exactly what I've been saying for a long time, and this is why I think guys like Zabit and other fighters can give Holloway problems. You have to kind of hit with him. You have to kind of counter him. And when you're not countering him, you got to put on a pace and throw heavy. Or you could throw out long like Conor McGregor was able to do, but he had that reach advantage over Holloway, so he was able to do that. Poirier had kind of the same reach as Holloway. A little bit longer, I would say. I know he has 72 and Holloway is 69, but Holloway is also 2 inches taller, so it kind of levels itself out a little bit. But it seemed like Holloway was not ready or comfortable having someone punch him from that far away. There were times where Holloway was just kind of sitting there. Right? His head was on the center line, and his head was getting popped back by the straight left hand and even the jab of Poirier. And whenever Holloway tried to set off his offense, because his style is like a snowball effect, it gets going, and once it gets too big, the avalanche comes in, and he just destroys you like he did Jose Aldo or something, or Anthony Pettis. You start to see some of that in the third round. His volume started kicking up to another gear, and Poirier had to do something about it. So what Poirier was doing was, he was just hitting back. He maybe wasn't hitting back with the same kind of attempted volume, but he was hitting back hard, right? He was making Holloway second guess coming in on him. And that's when he was starting to land those long range jabs, long range left hands. In the first two rounds, Poirier's output was pretty high with power shots. I am pretty surprised he didn't attempt more takedowns than he actually did, because I would think he has the BJJ advantage, and his coach was calling it for the entire fight. But he was winning the striking, so whatever is working, and just keep going on. The only thing that was getting in Poirier's way was I wouldn't say cardio issue, but the pace issue. I mean, he was hitting so hard so often, it is hard to keep that pace all 5 rounds. So in the third round, you start to see him gas out a little bit more. In the fourth round, I mean, he was stumbling around the octagon, and it seemed like he got a second win in the fifth one. And Max, he was just setting up too much. I mean, he doesn't have the power to work with. I mean, that's just natural. If you don't have it, it's kind of unfortunate. But he was looking for those setups. He was looking for those angles. And Poirier was doing hooks for the most part. So coming off on angles was pretty hard for Holloway to do without getting intercepted. And he did get intercepted a lot for it. And you got to give Holloway credit for his chin, man. He took some bombs by, I would say, the hardest puncher, or one of the hardest punchers he's faced, but it's the way Poirier was committing on him and landing. I mean, those are the hardest shots, hardest punches that Holloway was taking in his career. Now, I did say in my prediction video not to underestimate Poirier, because he definitely has a very good chance of winning this fight, if not even stopping Holloway, but I did not think he was going to be able to blast through Holloway for those first 2 rounds like that. I mean, overall, it was just an amazing fight. Great performance from Dustin Poirier, very good performance from Max Holloway as well. Holloway's power didn't change. He had the same power he had at 145, so that's kind of unfortunate for him. And he was just getting outgunned for the most part. I do think Holloway is more technical. He is a more technical striker than Poirier is. And like I said in my prediction video, I think Max Holloway is going to be able to beat more guys with his striking than Dustin Poirier is going to be able to. That is why I do think he is one of the best strikers in the UFC right now. But against each other, Poirier sets problems that Holloway is going to have a hard time getting past, specifically. But who these guys should be fighting next? Well, obviously, Dustin Poirier fight Khabib. That's the fight to make. Dustin Poirier earned it. He's 5-0-1 in his last 6 fights, and he just came off beating, 4 champions in a row? Let's do Khabib. Dustin Poirier versus Khabib. In my early prediction for that fight, I think Poirier sets problems for Khabib, but I think Khabib will eventually start dominating him with the grappling. I think the grappling and the wrestling advantage for Khabib is just a little too strong, but I do think Poirier is going to catch Khabib a couple times in the first 2 rounds. Poirier has to work a little bit on his pacing issue, his cardio just a little bit to match with that, but that's going to be an amazing fight. That's absolutely the fight to make. And for Max Holloway, go down to 145. Well, it depends if Alex Volkanovski beats Jose Aldo. If he does that, it's obviously going to be Volkanovski. I don't know what Zabit is going to do. I think Zabit needs another fight. So I would say if Volkanovski wins, it should definitely be him. If Jose Aldo wins, I mean, what do you do at that point? He's beating all the number 1 contenders. He's beat the last 3 contenders coming up in that division. But I would like to see the Volkanovski fight. If not that, just maybe throw in Zabit. Just throw him in there. That's definitely the fight I want to see, if I had the power to make the fight. And then we go to the co-main event. What a crazy fight. Kelvin Gastelum versus Israel Adesanya, where Adesanya won 48-46 on the scorecards. Now, I will admit, I did not give Kelvin as much credit as he deserved in that fight. He did way better than I thought he was going to do. I thought the fight was going to go the way the 5th round kind of went, but in a lesser degree, and then the 5th round was going to play on for like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. You know what I'm saying? Just all that damage that Kelvin was taking, I think it was going to accumulate in the last 3 rounds. But no matter what, I didn't expect Adesanya to finish Gastelum, but he was dropping him left and right in that 5th round. But for the first 2, Kelvin was putting his hands on Adesanya a lot easier, should I say. A lot easier than I thought he was going to be able to. I thought Adesanya was going to dictate a jab, establish it, and work with it, right? Maybe switch stances to give him some different kind of looks. Takedown defense was there, showed that his takedown defense is pretty elite, able to stop Brunson's and Kelvin Gastelum's takedowns pretty easily. When he leaves his hands down and he moves off angles and he kind of ducks his head and he almost never covers up, it was scary a couple times out there, man. I thought Kelvin was going to find an angle and land that bomb of a left hand he has and finish off Adesanya. And there were multiple times throughout the fight where Adesanya was throwing that straight right hand. He wasn't really setting it up, besides maybe trapping the lead hand of Kelvin Gastelum and then throwing the straight right. And Kelvin continuously was slipping on the outside of it. Adesanya was giving him that angle, that same angle Michael Bisping gave Kelvin. Multiple times though, but Adesanya was a little bit faster to retract it. That was the only thing that saved him out of those situations. Man, every time that was happening, I was like, oh my god, he's going to get caught doing this. But Adesanya showed he's a masterful striker. Kelvin is a brick house. I mean, you cannot walk through that guy. Whenever you're up against him, that threat of that left hand is always there. And even guys like Adesanya, who are as seasoned as he is, you are always alerted of that punch. Always. It's a different kind of a beast of a punch than it was at 170. But it wasn't really the left hand that was catching Adesanya. It was more so the right hand and then that high kick. Remember that left high kick? I mean, imagine a 5'9" fighter head kicking a 6'4" fighter who fights long and tall and stuff. That's crazy when I saw that happen. He kind of just threw it up there, he got it up there and landed, I think, toward the neck of Adesanya and stunned him bad. That was one of the biggest shots Kelvin was able to land in the entire fight, and Adesanya took a while to recover there. I mean, the heart from those two guys was crazy, and I love Adesanya throwing the doubling right straights. Right, he would throw right straight. Kelvin would evade it, sometimes move on the inside of it, and then Adesanya would pivot and throw another long straight. And that same straight right hand was the demise of Kelvin Gastelum. It got to the point where he wasn't able to see it at that close of range. If you notice in the 5th round, Adesanya gotten a lot closer on Kelvin. He was keeping a very long distance in the first 3 especially, and in the 5th round, he was really close, to the point where Kelvin wasn't able to slip the punches. And he wasn't really returning. Very, very interesting how Adesanya was able to play with his range. It seemed like in the 3rd round, I think it was, where he established his range, looked like he was in control, looked like he was setting a pace, and maybe something threw him off. I'm going to do a breakdown of this fight. Maybe something threw him off and he had to reestablish his range again, and he got a little bit closer. So, pretty interesting from Adesanya there. Oh, and can we talk about that high elbow guillotine? That was so close. That was some iconic stuff there. If he were to have submitted Kelvin Gastelum like that, I mean, we're talking about one of the best finishes of all time. I mean, I almost jumped through my ceiling. When that happened, I sprung up. I'm like, no way this is happening. Because Kelvin couldn't get out of it for a while. He gets out of it, and Adesanya goes for the triangle, almost gets that too, and flips him over. Adesanya is a real style bender. I mean, this guy can pick up grappling very, very quickly. And the fight with Robert Whittaker, that's going to be a legendary fight, especially after a fight like that off Kelvin. On Kelvin's chin. One of the hardest chins you'll ever see. I mean, yes, he got dropped multiple times in the fight, but your chin can only take so much. I mean, he ate some big shots from Adesanya and walked through them to the point where he just couldn't do it anymore. That kind of damage he took in that 5th round, I think is going to hurt his chin a bit in the future. I think you're going to be able to see guys hurt Kelvin a little bit more now. Same thing with Max Holloway. I think at 145, you're going to see Holloway get stunned a little bit more because the kind of damage those two guys took, that's the kind of damage that changes your chin pretty early, pretty quickly. So, yes, it's great to display it, especially when you have to. I mean, you kind of have to at that point, but I don't think they're going to be able to rely on that chin as much as they are now. But who these guys should be fighting next? Adesanya obviously going to fight Robert Whittaker. I cannot wait for that fight. It's one of my most anticipated fights right now ever they can make. And my early prediction for that one, I think Robert Whittaker beats Adesanya. I think this kind of confirmed it to me. I think Yoel Romero, I said this before as well, I was always confident Romero would beat Adesanya. This kind of confirmed that for me too. After seeing that fight, I think Romero and Robert Whittaker are just above everybody at this point. But Whitaker, I think, will beat Adesanya. I actually think he's going to finish Adesanya. And for Kelvin Gastelum, it's a tough road. I mean, he's still one of the top contenders. He almost had an even fight with Adesanya, who is the interim champion, so he shouldn't fall too much. I think Kelvin Gastelum versus Paulo Costa is a great fight to make next. If not that, I would say the loser. Oh, it's tough because he already beat Jacare in his last fight. I was going to say the loser of Jacare versus Hermanson. It's a tough position. I mean, because he already fought Weidman. He just fought Adesanya. Rockhold's in light heavyweight. Romero, there is Romero. So, okay, yeah. You could do Romero versus Gastelum. That makes a ton of sense. I love that fight. That's the fight I would make, actually, yeah. Romero versus Gastelum. And then we go to Eric Anders versus Khalil Rountree. I know a lot of people probably forgot what happened, but Rountree beats Anders. He won every single round pretty handily. I mean, he came out with that Thai style, threw everybody into a loop. I mean, everybody was thrown off guard, even Anders. I mean, Anders had this puzzled look on his face the entire first round. He was like, what do I do? This is not what I prepared for. That's kind of the tough thing about game planning. Because if someone just throws you off with an entire different style, how can you game plan for that, right? And if you're only going off your game plan, you're just going to be lost in there, and that seems what happened to Anders here. But I'm still kind of surprised Anders didn't go for takedowns, right? That was his advantage no matter what Rountree did. Don't trade with Rountree. Don't try to attack him recklessly and stuff. Mix up the takedowns. That was his advantage. But he never used it once. I understand he got his front leg kicked out many times, but the damage set in after 3 or 4 of them. So for that first minute or two, could have attempted something, because attempting takedowns is also going to relieve himself away from those kicks. But no, Rountree then just continued to destroy his legs and came out really traditional Muay Thai style and had no threat, had no worries from the takedowns of Anders. And then the second round came in, Anders didn't go for takedowns. I understand his legs hurt, but attempting them is better than just sitting there taking them, right? You got to do something, right? You can't just sit on the outside and eat leg kicks all day, because the more leg kicks you take, the harder the takedown is going to be able to commit with. But no, instead of doing that, he actually came in on Rountree and tried to trade punches, and Rountree rocked him. Dropped him, 4 times in that round? I mean, Rountree's hands are dynamite. They are absolutely ferocious, and this is the kind of guy that we expect coming off The Ultimate Fighter. Technical, talented, powerful striker. Has to work on his cardio a bit. He did gas out a little bit in the third round, and work on his grappling. I mean, his striking is dangerous. I was kind of a little bit irritated that the commentary was asking for the ref to stop the fight, when I understand Anders is getting dropped, but first of all, we've seen worse. Right, we've seen worse, and we've seen fighters actually come back from this. We saw Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard. That was worse than this was. Frankie looked like he was dying out there. It wasn't he was getting flash knocked down. He was getting dropped and was going limp multiple times in the first round. And then he was able to draw the fight. We saw Cheick Kongo come from the dead 3 times against Pat Barry to KO him. Right, and this is light heavyweight. This isn't the smaller weight classes. Anders definitely has a shot to land clean and knock out Rountree. And Anders was not out of it like that, right? He was getting dropped, but he was recovering. And if he is recovering and setting defense enough where Rountree isn't able to capitalize, you got to keep the fight going. You can't just stop it because someone's chances are dwindling. No, that's not why you stop fights. You stop fights when he can no longer defend himself, right? Not because he doesn't have a chance anymore. Well, you can't really dictate that. But it's a great performance for Khalil Rountree. Put it on Anders so effectively. I was always a fan of Rountree, but he's had some good performances and he's had some bad ones. But this was definitely one of his best. Actually, in my opinion, his best performance I've ever seen. And who these guys should be fighting next? They're not even ranked in the light heavyweight division, and light heavyweight isn't that stacked. It isn't that deep. So it could really be anybody at this point. I think they should give Khalil Rountree more of a test to get into the top 15. I think they should give him Misha Serkunov. That's a great fight for Khalil Rountree to take. And as for Eric Anders, if he's going to stay at 205, which I think he will, I think a fight with Sam Alvey would be excellent. That's a great fight for both of them. Then we go to Dwight Grant beating Alan Jouban by a split decision. I mean, what do you say about this fight? It was kind of uneventful. Alan Jouban had very good defense. He wasn't getting caught that much by Grant, but he wasn't setting any offense. He was kind of just attacking linearly with no setups at all, lunging left straights, and Grant was just countering, right? He was just moving back, counter, miss. He'll land some strikes here and there, he'll land some kicks, but yeah, Jouban lost because he wasn't landing. Grant won because he at least was landing. I would love to see Dwight Grant versus Abdulrazak Alhassan. I mean, let's go with that fight. 2 powerful punchers. One more of a counter striker. Abdulrazak Alhassan always brings a fight, always pressuring, so it would mesh up pretty well. I would love to see that one. And as for Alan Jouban, I think if I would, Thiago Alves would be a fun one for him. Both veterans in the game, older in their careers, both strikers. That's the fight I would make. And then we go to Ovince St. Preux versus Nikita Krylov, and Krylov was able to submit OSP in the second round, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's the only finish on the main card, surprisingly. But yeah, Nikita Krylov avenging his loss in the best way possible, submitting the guy that Von Flue choked you. That's pretty crazy, and nobody takes OSP to the ground to submit him. I mean, I understand OSP was gassing out, so the takedown attempt was there, but people have made this mistake before, thinking he's rocked and stuff. Tyson Pedro made that mistake, stunned and dropped OSP with a question mark kick to a straight, and then got submitted for it, right? So it was risky. I didn't expect him to do that. I didn't expect OSP to gas out so easily because he's gone 5 rounds with John Jones, right? He's gone 3 rounds many times and looked really good into the 3rd round, but he was attempting a lot of takedowns, so maybe it wore on him a little bit more because he's not so much of a wrestler. And Krylov looked like he had the better striking, and that's what I thought he was going to win with, if he was going to win. Moving around, throwing a lot of kicks, throwing a lot of punches, caught OSP a couple times with his hands, but nothing was really established on the feet. OSP kind of took him down easily, and then Krylov was able to get the rear naked choke after he was able to get OSP down with the double leg. So it's a great win for Krylov. Young guy, I think only 26 years old in the light heavyweight division. And we need guys like this. We need guys like Nikita Krylov, Johnny Walker, Khalil Rountree. We need these guys to get better, develop their skills, and challenge the veterans in this division. There's a lot of veterans. So who these guys should be fighting next? So Krylov able to beat the number 12 OSP, brings him to the top 15. I think a fight with him and Glover would be excellent. That'd be a fun fight. Let's do the loser of Volkan Oezdemir versus Ilir Latifi. I would love either of those guys to fight Krylov. And if it's not that, I guess I would go for Glover Teixeira. I think it's a more well-rounded fight. And then the last one I saw in entirety was Jalen Turner versus Matt Frevola, which headlined the prelims on ESPN. And Frevola was able to beat Turner by decision. I forgot what the scorecards were. Frevola was just using his wrestling for the most part. He tagged Turner a couple times in the 2nd and 3rd round with some jabs and stuff, but nothing really crazy. Just some inside low kicks and moved out. And then he was seeking out the takedowns, and the takedowns are coming pretty easy against Turner. But Turner seemed to be the better striker. Distance management really isn't there. He caught Frevola very hard in that 1st round multiple times, but rushed in too much to where Frevola was able to take him to the ground. I mean, when you're as tall as Turner is, who's like 6'3" in the lightweight division, and you have like an 80-inch reach or whatever it is, I mean, you got to keep some distance when you're striking, even when you hurt him. Look at Adesanya. That's what you kind of have to do. He's pretty much as tall as Adesanya is, and he's 2 weight classes below him. If anything, Turner should be doing a lot more, right? He came in through some long-range straights, stunned Frevola, and just rushed in and threw his punches too close. Frevola able to take him to the ground and just rinse and repeat pretty much. And Frevola was just too dominant on the ground. I think he had Turner's back at one point. So it's a good win for Frevola. I was pretty high in Jalen Turner. I mean, I was also pretty high in Boston Salmon, but he got starched in 25 seconds, which is pretty interesting to see Khalid Taha do that to someone. But yeah, overhand right, left hook, able to drop Salmon as well. Pantoja had a good win as well over Wilson Hayes, which is pretty interesting. Wilson Hayes just did not see the straight coming, got dropped quickly, and I think Hayes' chin has been hit a few times to the point where he just can't take the shots anymore. He took a lot of damage from Demetrius Johnson, took a lot of damage from Henry Cejudo, who hits like a truck, and this one just able to get put down pretty easily. But yeah, overall, seemed like a good night of fights. Not too many finishes, but the last 2 fights really made up for the entire card. I mean, that's pretty much what the whole story was about. So I hope you guys enjoyed the reaction video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. One of my breakdowns is going to come out tomorrow, most likely, and the next might come out Monday or Tuesday or something like that. So be lookout for that. I don't know which one I should break down first, the main event or co-main event. Be lookout for those, and leave a comment below what you guys think of the entire card. I know everybody was entertained by those last 2 fights, but about the whole card, pretty solid, I would say. Oh yeah, and can ESPN Plus please fix their service? I mean, how many people could not watch the fights? And they paid for it. That's kind of messed up. I thought they would at least get it running, get it fixed during the event. I mean, they knew this big pay-per-view was coming up. It was their first pay-per-view on ESPN Plus, right? I think they should have prepared for this a little bit better. Whatever, man. You got to fix it for next time, 100%, because this is going to turn off a lot of people. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.